I'm going to look at lesson 2 of unit 5, which is investigating lists. So we're going to be looking at 3 different apps that use lists, and we'll explore those 3 apps without seeing the code to notice the similarities and predict how they will work. Then we're going to explore the code itself and make additions and modifications to the apps. And then to conclude the lesson, we'll review and discuss different common programming patterns with conditionals. So our objectives today are to identify common programming patterns using lists, to explain the purpose of programming patterns with lists, both in terms of how they work and what they accomplish, and to modify apps that can make use of common programming patterns with lists to adjust their functionality. So I had a couple people mention that they wish they would have learned lists before making that the last app we did in Unit 4. And that's really an awesome realization. I know it can be a little frustrating as well, but to recognize the usefulness of lists is awesome and totally and shows growth as you know, in your journey to becoming a computer scientist. So that's great to notice that. And yeah, and that's a big piece of what we're doing here in this lesson, is just figuring out when and why to use lists. So the warm-up question asks, what are some similarities and differences between variables and lists? How does a list manage complexity in a program? So you can take a minute, you can pause the video and just answer that question. You know, just write down your thoughts. Don't worry about it being, you know, right or wrong, good or bad. Just think about it for a second and collect your thoughts here. And then come back. So here's some ideas to add to your list. So both are used to store information. Lists can store multiple items, while variables can only store one. In JavaScript, which is what we've been using, both start with the keyword var. Okay. Lists are written with square brackets around them. Square brackets, which are those guys. And lists can store many different types of data. So for managing complexity, how does a list manage complexity? So you don't need to know how a list is created in order to use it. All you need to know is the name. There is a separation between the abstract properties of the data type and the concrete details of its representation. Okay, that's kind of a lot of information. So let's break it down a little bit. So we don't need to know how a list is created in order to use it. We just need to know the name. So again, we don't need to worry. It's kind of like this, we're using that idea of abstraction here, where we don't necessarily need to know how the list is being created. We could have a ton of complex mathematical equations going on, calculating all the different elements of a list. We don't really need to know how that's working. We just need to know the name of the list and how to access the different elements. So that's a way that it manages complexity. It makes a complex system a little bit easier to manage, okay? There's a separation between the abstract properties of the data type and the concrete details of its representation. Well, so there's a separation between the list and the details of its representation. So again, this kind of saying the same thing, where the complexities of the list and how it's being created can all be taken care of by the computer. We can tell it exactly what we want it to do, and we don't need to worry so much about how exactly that's working out. whereas like the details of how it's represented, the index numbers of each element is very concrete, is very accessible for us, okay? So let's try and break that down a little bit. So lists kind of utilize the concept of abstraction. They allow for complex, they can be created in a very complex way, but the way we access and use a list is very concrete, right? And then also programs that use lists are easier to read and manage. Separate variables are not needed for each individual element. Yeah, so it just cleans up the code. They clean up the code. Clean up the code by not requiring a separate, I can't spell today. Separate, what do you spell separate? Separate, no. Separate, I haven't had caffeine yet today. That's my excuse. Requiring separate names for each element. You guys know what I mean? Cool. Okay, so that's our warm-up. That's what we're starting with. And now what we're going to do is we're going to go into code.org, lesson 2, unit 5. And I want you guys, you can pause this video and watch this intro to list part 4 video. And then come back and we'll start going through the different levels, all right? All right, now that you've watched your video, we're gonna start looking at these 2 different apps. So I'm gonna go through both the outfit picker and the band namer, but you only need to look at one of them, and you only need to answer the questions for one of them, all right? I'm gonna go through the outfit picker first. So first thing I'm gonna do is just run the app and see what happens. So looks like I get to scroll through different outfits. So I can only go through, looks like I can only go through the list. It doesn't do like a roundabout scrolling. So since I'm, yeah, so I have to only go to the right. Let's try and find a shirt for this skirt. That looks good. Okay, so pretty simple, pretty straightforward what it does. You can just find a different outfit. I'm gonna go through these different questions, and you know, normally we would talk about them as a class, but this will just have to do for now. So lines 1 through 2. Why does this program use 2 lists? What is each one storing? So I can see in here, my first 2 lines are establishing lists. I can see that because, first of all, it starts out as var, so just like variables, and then I name it, and then I'm assigning these square brackets to the variables. So that is telling the computer that I'm assigning a list to the variables. So why are they using 2 lists? Well, because we want to have a list for the tops and a list for the bottoms. And obviously one of them is storing the tops and the other one is storing the bottoms. All right, now 4 through 5. Why does this program include tops index and bottoms index? What would happen if these variables were removed from the program? So the index is going to be used for, it's going to be used for the scrolling. Okay, let's just go through the rest of this code real quick. So yeah, so I have my on event. So when these buttons are clicked, if the tops index, so if that variable tops index is greater than 0, then tops index will turn into tops index minus 1. Tops index minus 1. Okay, so 0, let's put on our watcher just to see. I think show watchers, tops index. Yeah, so if I scroll to the left, so this is left button. Yeah, so as I go to the left, the index is going down. Goes from 0 up to 5. And then same thing with the right button, it's just the opposite, it's going up. And then same thing for the bottoms. Goes down to the left and up to the right. So why are we using those variables, and what would happen if those variables were removed? Well, those variables are allowing this scrolling to happen. Okay? It gives an index to where those different outfits are. Let's go to lines 10 through 15. So again, so this is there. Yeah. So this is that on event. So on event, when the left top button is clicked, if the tops index is greater than 0, so it can't be, if it's 0, then it's not going to work, right? Then nothing will happen. But if it is greater than 0, then we're going to change the value of tops index to tops index minus 1, so just 1 less. And we're going to update the screen. We're going to update the screen with whatever top matches that index number. Okay. Now line 18, if tops index is less than tops index dot length minus 1, what is that conditional statement checking? And what would break if instead it was tops index minus is less than tops list dot length? So this is checking. We talked about this, I think it was in lesson 1, we talked about this, that tops list dot length. What that's doing is checking the length of the list. So remember, in our lists, we start at 0 and we go up. So if I had 3 elements in my list, the largest index number would be 2, because it would be 0, 1, and 2. Okay? So if the tops index, so this is saying, like, why are we using tops list dot length minus 1 instead of just tops list dot length? Well, we want to keep the index, we want to make sure that the index number is within the list. So if tops index is less than tops list dot length, well, the length would be 5, or would be 6, right? But there's not an index 6 in this list. There's only up to index 5. So we need to make sure that the index number is less than the highest index number in the list. Let's see if they gave us a better way to explain that. So let's see. Yeah, so this if statement is making sure that the tops index doesn't go off the end of the list, which would create an error. If the if statement were changed, then it would be possible to increase the index 1 beyond the end of the list, which again would create an error, right? That's a little bit tricky to understand, so let me know if you have questions about that. Let's look at this, lines 38 through 43. Find all the places that the update screen function is called. What changes about the way the app runs, if any, of these calls were removed? So let's look for all the update screen. So we've got it there. oh, that's just the naming of the function. We have it here. So when the left button is clicked, and then when the right top button is clicked, and then again when the left bottom's button is clicked, and when the right bottom's button is clicked. And then this is just naming, or this is, you know, assigning the function, creating the function. So what changes about the way the app runs if any of these calls were removed? Well, if any of those calls were removed, then the outfit wouldn't change. Outfit wouldn't change, right? Function is called after the app is started and inside each event handler. If it were not included in any of these places, then either the close would not show up when the app was started, or the outfit would appear to change when the different buttons, or would not appear to change when the different buttons were clicked. Right. Now for modify. So we want to edit the if statement on lines 18 through 20 so that the tops index is set to 0 if the user hits the right button when they're already at the end of the list. Right. So what this is saying here in 18 through 20, we have an if statement. So if tops index is less than tops list.length minus 1, then tops index equals tops index plus 1. But what I want to happen is when I get to the end of my list, it just starts back over so that it goes back to 0. So I need to have an else in here so that when tops index equals, no, that's not it. When tops index, I'm definitely going to do an else. Definitely going to do an else. So else when, let's think. So when tops index is, so that tops index is set to 0. So when tops index, when we get to the end of the list, so when tops index, when tops index equals tops list dot length, then tops index equals 0. I think that's what we're gonna be. Where am I missing a semicolon? I don't think I'm missing a semicolon, am I? It says that I am. Let's try it. Run. Ah, nope, I did something wrong. Line 21. Yeah, if tops, aha, I know what I did. Can you see what I did? Yeah, I need to have a double. No, I don't. I need to have a double here. Then tops index. No, this one needs to be a double. Would that work? Run. Nope, still wrong. What are you looking for? Missing semicolon, unexpected token. So else, not when it equals, I just went over this, not when it equals top list dot length, it's when it equals top list dot length minus 1. Where is it missing a semicolon? You want me to put a semicolon there? That doesn't seem right. Maybe it needs a semicolon here. No, unnecessary semicolon. Let's see. I don't really think I want it there, but did it go away? Let's try. Let's give this a try. Nope, I just messed something up. That's still working. Okay, let me try that again. I did this already. I don't know what I did. So, let me just delete that. Go back to where I was. Reset. Okay, so run. Then this is clicked. My tops index is changing. But now, if when that's less than tops index dot length minus 1, then that happens. If, and then should be else. Else. Aha, so if it's anything other than this, I didn't need to put in a whole thing. I just needed to do else tops index will equal 0. That was much simpler than I thought it was. Now let's try it. So if I go over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and now, so this has all been less than the length of the list minus 1, and then it keeps going all the way over. Cool? Okay. So that takes care of our outfit picker. Now let's move on to the band namer. So we've got our band namer app. Let's run the app and hit name random family, wake up rakes, time family. So it's just pulling random adjectives and random nouns. Forbidden monkeys, that's a good one. I like that. So let's go through our list of questions. So lines 1 and 2, why are there 2 lists in this app instead of 1? Well, clearly it looks like there is an adjective list and a noun list, okay? Why is sideways monkeys always the first band shown? Well, it looks like sideways is our first element of the adjectives list, and monkeys is the first adjective of the nouns list, and we establish those 2 variables, adjective and noun, the indexes at 0. I think it's actually indices. Cool, so that's why that one's always showing first. What would break if this line read random number 0 noun list dot length instead of random number 0 noun list dot length minus 1? Well, we talked about this, well, I talked about this in when I was talking about the last app. And we talked about this, I think, a little bit in lesson 1, actually, where this noun list dot length, so that pulls the list length, how long the list is, how many elements there are. However, what this is doing is we want to call on a random element. So we want to call it by its index number. But the index numbers go to 1 less than the length. So just for example, if I had a list that was 3 elements long, my highest index number would be 2. Would be 2 because it has 0, 1, and 2. All right. So if we were to do random number 0 to noun list.length, there is that possibility that we would call on, let's see, how long is this list? There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So if I were to call on, so there's seven elements in the list, but if I were to call on index 7, we would get an error because the index numbers only go up to 6 because we start at 0. Okay, and now let's talk about what these lines are doing. So this is the update screen. So when we have so we're assigning a new value to the variable adjective, and we're assigning it adjective list. So we're pulling that list and we're picking an index number, some random index number. This adjective index would be its own, variable. And that variable is changed when we click on the randomize the name my band button. So we are assigning a random number from the adjective list. We're assigning a random index number from that list, and that is pulling one of those adjectives from the list and assigning it to the variable adjective. Same thing is happening with the noun. So this noun index, it's nice it shows up like that. This noun index is going to be a random number between 0 and the highest index number in the noun list. And then that number is used to call on one of the elements from the noun list. So we're just assigning a noun from the noun list to the variable noun. And then the variable band name is going to be adjective plus, you guys remember that symbol, the \n is a line. It's a new line. So it's adjective and then new line and the noun. And then we set the property. Band name label is, we're changing the text to band name. Cool. So to make the following modifications to the program, we're going to add words to the nouns list and the adjectives list. So what do I want to call my random band name? Let me think. Let's say, do they have electric on there? I feel like that's a good adjective to have. Electric poppies. Let's see if we can get it to call on that band name. So reset, run, bam, what balloons, electric turnips. That's also pretty cool. Time balloons, forbidden rakes, time rakes, sideways turnips, the organized sandwich. That's a good one too. I like that. We'll end on that. All right. So now what we're going to do is I'll have you pause this video and watch this video instead, and learn about assigning and updating lists. And then come back. All right, let's take a look at this pair maker app. So we will just go through and we're going to add some people in. I'm going to add Lee, and I'll add Ted and Susan and Max. I'm going to remove you, and remove another person. I'm going to add a few more people. I'll add Mary, and I'll add Edie and Mike. Okay, so we have 2, 4, 6, 7. Let's add one more person. Who shall we add? We'll add Whoopa the dog. Whoopa. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to assign a random pair. I'm first going to pair up Lee. Oh, no, that's not how that works. Just assign any random pair. Aha, this drop down is only for the remove button. Yeah, so I've got Edie and Ted, Max and Lee, Susan and Mike, and Mary and Whoopa. Cool. So yeah, so we're just assigning random pairs between people. Pretty neat. Let's go through the different lines and cover these questions. So line 6, what does .join do? Why is it necessary for this app to run? So line 6 says set property. So this is in a function or update screen function. Set property, the people label, which is this up here. The text up here is going to be people list dot join with a new line. So what it's doing is it's taking that people list, which is all the different names that we're adding on. It's taking that and turning it into text, turning it into a string. And we'll do it again just to show. So when I add people up here, they show up, you know, line by line. Each person gets their own line. So that's what that \n is for. Now let's look at line 7. This references an options property of a dropdown. So what does this do? So the options property of the dropdown. So it helps if you go into design mode and hit the dropdown. And then over here, you'll see this options. So the options, if you start typing in it, it shows up over here. Shows up what's going on. So what does our code say? So it says set property people dropdown. The options will be the people list. So it's changing what we see in that dropdown to be that list of people, right? So when I add people on there, they all show up in here. It only shows one of the people in the list, one of the elements. But if we click on it, obviously we see them all. So get lines 18 through 19. So in 18, we have variable person index is assigned the value get property people dropdown index. So this references the index property of a dropdown. So let's go look at it again in design mode and see what that property does, then describe how these lines of code work together to remove a user from the list. Let's go back to design mode. Again, we'll hit drop down, and then over here in index, we have -1. And I can't change it. So what is that doing? What is that doing? That is, yeah, so this is telling us what number we're using. So what index we're referencing from that drop down. And that's what that's the information that we're assigning to this variable person index, and then that's the person that we actually remove. We remove that item from the list. Cool. Okay, line 24. So why does the conditional read people list dot length greater than or equal to 2 rather than greater than or equal to 1? Well, that's because we need to have 2 people to make a pair. And if it was just greater than or equal to 1, then there would be an error because there wouldn't be a second person to pair it to. Right, and then lines 26 and 27, what would happen if we switch the order? So in 26, we are assigning the variable random person 1 to this random index from the people list. And then we are, and then we're removing greater than or equal to 2. So random index 1, random person 1. So if we were to switch the order there, then we would, so this is all random assigned. So this is when we're assigning the partners together. This is picking the first person, this bit here, these 3 lines, 25 through 27. So we're picking the first person. So first thing we do is we pick the index number from the list. And then we assign that random index number, we assign that value to the first person that we're choosing. And then the remove, and then we remove them. If 27 happened before 26, then we would remove the person before picking them, and then that person would just never get paired up. Cool. All right, so now we have our modifies. We want to change the default names that are available when this app starts running. And we want to update the app to pick groups of 3 rather than groups of 2. So let's give that a try. So first thing, we want to change the default names that are available when the app starts running. So let's find where we have that. So first thing we want to have is, so instead of you, me, and another person, let's have, I don't know, let's do Larry, Mo, and Curly, because we can just have the 3 Stooges hang out with us, right? And then we'll always have this app pick 3 rather than 2. So let's figure out where that's happening. So add a person, no, so remove a person. Okay, we want to keep those the same. But now we want it to be if people list.length is greater than or equal to 3, then we want to have a random index 1. So we want to still do this. So we want to have them pick their first person. Then the same thing happens with the second person. We pick a random index number, and then we use that index number to assign a name of a person, and then we want to remove that person from the list. So what we're going to do is we're going to just copy the semicolon there. I don't know what happened. So now we're going to have, oops, I must have deleted something. Should be like that. So now we're going to have random index 3, random person 3. We want this to be random index 3, and then we want to remove random index 3. Random person 3. It's called right there. It's called. And then down here, when we set property, we want pair label text to become random person 1 plus and plus random person 2 plus and, make sure you have your spaces in there, plus random person 3. And that should do it. Let's give it a try. Run. So I got Larry, Mo, and Curly. We spelled Curly wrong. It should just be, let's reset. I don't like that spelling. Maybe that is right. I don't know. Let's add Mary, Lee, and Max. Mary, Lee, and Max. Now assign a random pair. Mo and Lee and Curly. Cool. Larry and Max and Mary. It could be that we have this be random person. Should really be a comma and then a space plus and then a comma. Don't forget your Oxford comma. Let's try reset, run. Larry, Mo, and Curly. Mo, Curly, and Larry. Yeah. Cool. All right. And then there's 2 more slides I want you guys to look at. These are just kind of like overviews of what that random list pattern will look like. And then over here we have the list scrolling pattern. So how we kind of set that up. These are really nice tools to have for when you will be creating, when you'll be writing more code yourself. And then also will be helpful when studying for the Unit 5 test. Cool. Again, if you guys have any questions, I'm more than happy to help. All right. Hope you guys are having an awesome day.